Rise up!
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast. The best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root from cardswire.com, USA Today's NFL wire site that covers the Arizona Cardinals, episode 697. And this, the third show of the week, second with my co-host, Seth Cox from revengeofthebirds.com, SB Nation's Arizona Cardinals site. And it's our week 2 preview where the Arizona Cardinals take on the Carolina Panthers in their home opener at State Farm Stadium Sunday afternoon, 1:05 p.m. local time. And if you're not going to be at the game, you can watch that on CBS. They take on the Carolina Panthers. And in this show, we will talk about it. So Seth and I we reviewed and reacted to the Saints game earlier in the week. I had Panthers Wire contributor Jared Feinberg on in a show yesterday, and that is ready for you guys to listen to get kind of an enemy's perspective, the opposing perspective. But this is where we talk about our Seth. This, how concerned? I don't know what level of concern we should have for this game, because it's a home opener, so there's that. But they're coming off of an ugly win. The Panthers look terrible in week 1, but the Cardinals never play the Panthers well.
No, they haven't. And, you look at it, and this is a game that is ripe for kind of, you're looking ahead. You have that division rivalry game looming with a team that's likely to be without, their starting quarterback, will be without their all-pro tight end. And so you look at it and you go, oh man, we could make some hay. And it's like, no, let's just focus on a frisky
business. Yes, it's
Carolina Panthers team that, like you said, historically you have struggled against.
And it doesn't even make sense either. That's the thing, is because it's not like it's the same group. It's weird, these weird vibes. They beat Jake Delhomme, and then they made Carson Palmer do a full Jake Delhomme. They beat Cam Newton in his NFL debut back in 2013 or 2012 or whatever that was. They beat him again. They beat him in his debut in 2011. They beat him again in, I think it was, that was the game that it was Darrell Washington and Carlos Dansby on the field at the same time. That was, I was in Dallas before the ASU Notre Dame game for that one. So I remember that one, watching it on the hotel TV. But yeah, it's just that. Well, let's start by talking about the Panthers. They were terrible. There was nothing good about that Panthers game. If you're talking about the Panthers in week 1, they lose 26-10 to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And when I saw that, is Jacksonville good? And then I looked at the numbers. I'm like, well, Travis Etienne, that is, did really well. The Panthers were bad offensively, 3 turnovers by Bryce Young. They gave up 200 rushing yards to the Jags. And I'm like, okay, this is good, especially when the Cardinals played that ugly game against New Orleans. This is the game that you could feel like might be breakout, but at the same time, and I'll say this, what a bummer for the Panthers, for the schedule makers, to do that to them, is that their first 2 games of the season are a team's season home opener. So they played the Jacksonville in their their opener. Now they're coming to Arizona, where the Cardinals have their home opener, and that's always there's extra energy, there's extra juice, there's something a little extra for that. That was really unfavorable for the Panthers, just as favorable as how this schedule played out for the Cardinals, to be able to start with the Saints, then the Panthers, and to play the Saints, Panthers, Titans, and Colts in their first 6 games of the year.
Yeah, and you just look at it, right? It just becomes one of those situations where you got to play these guys anyways, right? Like the schedule is the schedule is the schedule. You know it basically years in advance, sans one game, right? But for Carolina, you look at it and you go, man, the schedule makers just don't necessarily love these teams that give them some headaches, right? I mean, Dave Tepper's been a bit of a pain in the tuchus, and starting on the road 3 of 4 is tough. Obviously, that Week 5 game against Miami looks like a little bit of an easier one now, but it's you're going to have to play all these teams anyways. They're in a division that is run by the Buccaneers, but you feel like the Falcons are on the climb up, and obviously, as we discussed, the Saints are bad. But the question becomes: is this a team that can compete? Right? Like, is this a team that can do something with the former first overall pick in Bryce Young? And a lot of people were saying at the end of last year, oh, Bryce Young's back. I mean, they figured it out. They got it together. Obviously, he had that excellent game against your Arizona Cardinals, right? And you look at it and you go, okay. Those last 5 games it was, or 4 games, they went 2-2. He goes out and he throws for over 200 yards per game, averages a touchdown a game, throws for 8 touchdowns to only 2 interceptions. So you're like, okay, this guy's on the right track. I mean, you look at the last 3 games against the Cardinals, the Bucks, and the Falcons, and this dude threw for 6 touchdowns. 7 touchdowns and no interceptions. He had well over, a 100% QB rating. Like, he looked like he was turning a corner. And then you come out and his game wasn't terrible. I mean, the first thing we need to acknowledge is that he didn't play terribly. There were just some issues within the game. The biggest of which being that his receivers dropped multiple passes that were good passes. The second of which is kind of what you and I will likely focus on about being the key to the game, and that's stopping Chuba Hubbard. And Hubbard had a bad game. I mean, there's no other way around it. And after his, I guess we could say, career game, I mean, he's had some very good games in his career, but his career game against the Arizona Cardinals, he couldn't even play the last 2 games last year, right?
Yeah.
He goes for 25 carries for 152 yards and 2 touchdowns. He has 29 touches in the game. And you look at it, and this was that's a lot. I mean, that's a lot for anybody, but especially a running back. He's coming off a season where he had 293 touches in 15 games. Again, this dude couldn't get on the field the last 2 games. And so you kind of look at it. I know it wasn't 300 carries, but could he be having, a similar fall off to that, right? Like where you were just so heavily used, especially last year. And again, this is a guy that's 26 years old and was a 4th round pick. He's coming off a season which, we would probably highlight as his career season.
Right.
And it back-to-back years where he's over 200 carries. He's over 500 touches in those 2 years combined. I just, you do.
What could it be? It might mirror exactly what happened to him at OK State in college, because he led the nation in carries, rushing yards, and total touches with 351. And then the next year he only played 7 games.
Right. And so now
he would have, and that's why he ended up being a 4th rounder, because of the drop off from 2019 to 2020. Okay, that's not fair. 2020. That was the pandemic year. They didn't play a full season, but he went from 6.4 yards per carry lead and everything to dropping to 4.7 yards per carry in that pandemic year.
Well, and you look at it, Jess. I mean, last year, and again, it's a 1-game sample size. We're going to have a lot more to look at, but last year, this is a dude that averaged 4.8 yards per carry. Anything over 4.5 is really good, right? Anything over 5 is excellent. This year, and again, 1-game sample size is very tough to figure out, but I mean,
especially since James Conner had the same sort of issues
right
in week 1 too.
Yeah, but 3.6 yards per carry. And so you look at it and it's just like, okay, this will be something to watch if you're a Panthers fan.
Yeah, interesting. The Panthers, though, they have some really good players all over the field. Jonathan Gannon gushed about so many. He sees Bryce Young as dangerous. He talked about Chuba Hubbard and basically how they didn't know how to stop him last time. He likes Ted McMillan. He thinks Robert Hunt is one of the best guards on the planet. Derek Brown, train wrecking games. He's a big fan of J.C. Horn. And then spoke about the additions of Christian Roseboom at linebacker and Trayvon Merrick at safety. And so you look, they've got some individual talent. And you look at that, well, why were they so awful in week 1?
Well, like we said, the first thing that happened, and the real bummer of it all, was outside of Tetra McMillan, the receiving corps was dreadful, and it is dreadful. I mean, Xavier Legette has not taken the steps that you and I thought he would take. We were big Legette fans coming out of South Carolina, and while I still hope that he can turn it around, he's almost become more of a meme than he has a football player, right? For his deep Southern accent and his kind of different personality traits and the things that he hasn't experienced in life that have made him kind of an internet sensation. I mean, when you get 3 catches for 10 yards from a first-round receiver, and you're talking about a guy that didn't even get to 500 yards last year as a rookie, and I know he was 3 yards away, but couldn't even get to 500 yards. You look at it and you're like, this is not the start to the season that we wanted to see from this guy. I mean, this is a guy that you needed to see that next step, for as much hand-wringing over what we saw with Marvin Harrison Jr., he had a good rookie season. He didn't have a rookie season where you go, okay, that wasn't ideal. And so, Hunter Renfrow is back, but I mean, is that a big deal? I mean, he's not a bad player by any stretch of the imagination, but I mean, he's an older receiver that catches a lot of short passes. So that's what the issue became. And then again, getting absolutely nothing from the running game. It made that offense really, really bad in week 1. And so that's the other thing. They were missing Ike Ekwonu. I think he's been dealing. What is the illness he's dealing with? Have you looked into
Had
it?
an appendectomy right before
Okay.
the season, so maybe he plays this week. Maybe.
I mean, that's asking a lot. And this would basically be like his, warm up at this point, right?
Yeah. I wonder, because he's been limited, but I wonder if that's just. Yeah, I'd be surprised if he plays, and if he doesn't play, then you like things even better about the Cardinals, because
Yeah.
Between Ekwonu and Hunt, those are the two like anchors, and then everyone else. Moten, he's fine. Corbett, questionable. And
Lewis
then
is
they've got Damian Lewis, whose best days are behind him, basically.
Yeah, and so you look at it, they didn't, they didn't pass protect well. They didn't run block well. So when you don't do either of those things, it makes for a long day. And then defensively, you kind of mentioned it. They've got some like players, right? Obviously, J.C. Horn is a very talented cornerback. You talked about Derek Brown. The hard part is that they're a team that's kind of piecemeal together, especially in terms of the overall how they've built them. And I know they're just in year 2, right? Like this rebuild is coming along slowly. And again, they had the worst defense in the NFL last year, 32nd in points against. They were 32nd in yards. So I mean, they gave up the most yards out of any team in the NFL. So like all of that, right, is what they're looking to improve on. And I know this is kind of dumb to say, but it's like, hey, 26 points is not good, but it's better than last year, right? And so that's kind of how you have to look at it right now. Because they're just not there defensively. I mean, you talked about it, right? 200 rushing yards is absurd to give up.
Which that feels, you're like 200, especially the struggles they had against the run against New Orleans. I'm sure Carolina will adjust, but to struggle against that Brandon Staley defense, to then be able to look at the Panthers. And it's interesting because you remember how Ejiro Evero was like one of the hottest names to like a head coach and defensive coordinator, and now his defense have been bad. So it's been an interesting turn of events.
Well, and you look at it, Jess. I mean, this is, like I said, the defense. It doesn't really offer a whole lot in terms of pass rush, and we saw last year when you can't rush the passer, it makes things very, very difficult.
And they didn't get a single sack.
I know.
They had one quarterback hit on Trevor Lawrence last week. So yeah, this is a team's there wasn't much good other than there's some positive. Ted McMillan did look good. Like he moved around good. Statistically, their free agent additions of Trayvon Merrick at safety and Christian Roseboom at linebacker, they were productive. But particularly, as we know with the Cardinals, it's not generally the best to have your safety have the most tackles. That generally means that your defense is probably not good, or you're doing really special things with your safety. And I don't think they're doing special things with Merrick. I don't think.
No, not at all. And Merrick has not turned out to be the player that the Raiders or obviously the Panthers had hoped he would be. And so those things, and you look at it, the pass rush was bad. I mean, we're talking about a team that, again, you hit it right, like one quarterback hit, no sacks. They had 4 hurries as a team. I know people were slightly disappointed with the Josh Sweat, debut, but he had 4 hurries by himself. So like, it's like you said, is it Evero? Is it the scheme? Is it the talent? Is it a combination of all of the above? All that being said, this is a game the Cardinals need to win, right?
It absolutely is. Coming up next on the Rise of Seared podcast, Best Our Cardinals Talk on the Way. Let's talk about the keys of the game, keys to victory, and the matchups that matter. That's coming up next on Rise of Seared. We're back on the Rise of Seared podcast, Best of Cardinals Talk on the Web, in the section where we talk about the keys to victory for the Cardinals and the matchups that we're watching. The Cardinals take on the Carolina-Panthers in Week 2 at State Farm Stadium, 1:05 p.m. local time, airing on television on CBS. I guess based on what we saw from the Jaguars against the Panthers, I think you really have to hit on run the ball and run the ball well, because they didn't, unless like have an adjustment for it. But if the Jaguars could rush for 200 yards, you have to be looking at James Conner and Trey Benson have to be looking at this defense and going, I want to eat. Give me the ball. Let's do this. And kind of go from there. And it won't be exciting. Like it won't be a high flying offense, but like if it's anything how the Jaguars did it, it will be effective and they'll move down the field.
Yeah. And you know, people will still complain about it, right? Like that's what's going to happen if they end up doing that. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, right? Like you just want this offense to score points. You want them to move the ball, and you want them to set the defense up to win games. And that's what matters more than anything. So, you know, we'll see how that plays out in this one. You know, right now, the key to this game is can you continue to make the Panthers run defense look bad? And if you're able to do that, if you're able to put, you know, good games, we're not, you know, obviously we always want to see, you know, great games from James Conner and Trey Benson. But if you're able to get good games, right? Like if you're able to mimic, to your point, what we saw out of the Jaguars, and you know, 143, you're probably not going to see a 71-yard James Conner run. I quite frankly don't even know the last time he had a 71-yard run, right? But like, can you see a team that puts together, you know, 200 yards rushing, or let's just say 150 plus yards rushing, and it's balanced and it's not all off one big play like we talked about last week, right? That controls the tempo of the game and then sets up the play action and allows you to do the things you want to do offensively. That's what to me the key to this game is. And it's very easy to say that, but that's the reality, because this is a Carolina team that's going to come in and they're going to be like, okay, that was embarrassing last week. Like there's no two ways about it. So we got to come back and show that we're not a joke of a run defense against, you know, what has been one of the better rushing offenses in the NFL the last couple of years.
Yes. Another thing, like if the Cardinals counter with this, if they commit an extra body in the box, you know who could feast off of that? Trey McBride.
Yeah, and you look at
It's Trevin Wallace. As Jared Feinberg's like, Wallace, one of their linebackers, played terribly.
Yeah,
played terribly last week.
Well, I was going to bring that up. He was genuinely bad. And you look at it, Britton Strange led the Jaguars in receiving. Most of you probably don't even know who that is, but that's a guy that is a third-year rookie, third-year tight end. Yeah, he was a second-round pick in 2023. So I don't want to take like a swipe at him. I don't want people to think I'm talking negatively about him, but he's not on the same level as Trey McBride. I mean, and this is a guy that had 4 catches for 59 yards last week. I mean, he was right around his career high. And so if you're doing that with Britton Strange, like you said, oh man, this is a Trey McBride feast game, especially like you said, if they have to find a way to stop the run, and it's ironic because they have a great run defender in Ashawn Robinson along the line, right? They have a guy in Derek Brown who you've talked about, like just a dominant force in the middle, and so that alone, you just feel like, well, they should be able to stop the run, but their edges
You
are
can't steal the edge, right? If you can't steal
right.
the edge,
DJ Wonnum has not been playing well. Pat Jones, I'm not familiar with Pat Jones' game. I'm not even gonna like try to lie about that. Like I don't know. I'm not familiar with him if we're being completely fair. But like Nick Scorton, a guy we talked about quite a bit in Princely, the edge from Florida, Princely barely played, and so and he didn't come in on a single run defense. And so the point being, if you got guys like DJ Wonnum and Pat Jones who are struggling that bad against the run, and you've got this, this third round rookie, I believe, Princely was right, and you've got this guy, and you're like, he's not ready. That speaks volumes. And Nick Scorton, a guy that I love coming out, he struggled against the run in this game. So you look at it, you do look at it, and you go, if every single edge defender is struggling, maybe it is the scheme.
that is something. That is something for sure. I think there are two premier, like, exciting matchups to watch because it's skill players, and you've got them on both sides of both the Cardinals and the Panthers, because on one side you've got Marvin Harrison against J.C. Horn, and on the other side you've got Ted McMillan against potentially Will Johnson, which you get the two rookies. They're really long, really good. And then you get Marv versus JC to see how that plays out. That'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, and this is, that's an interesting matchup. The one I'm looking at right now, and you kind of intimated at it earlier, Jess, is that the Panthers offense, they could not. I shouldn't say could not. They did not block well. Yash Ninjman, I believe, is the young gentleman's name that played left tackle for them in this game. Yeah, he was bad, man, especially trying to protect Bryce Young's blind side. And again, Josh Sweat, four hurries in the first game. Baron Browning, a sack in the first game. Bryce Young can move. We know that. He's got some escapability. But can the Cardinals pass rushers that they paid this offseason, Browning, to return, and then Josh Sweat for a nice size contract, can they take advantage if Ninjaman is still in the game over Ike Ekwonu? And by the way, if Ike Ekwonu is in the game, can they take advantage of the fact that this guy's returning from having an appendectomy? And probably, based on my small knowledge of appendectomy returns, usually you're like 4 to 6 weeks on that. So, like, can they take advantage of that? Those are questions that should be interesting to watch, because the Cardinals' pass rush last week was not great, but as we talked about, the Saints made it a very large focus to not allow the Cardinals to get to Spencer Rattler consistently. And so that's something to watch and see how that goes in that situation.
Yeah. Any other matchups or keys that you can think?
I mean, I think you always in the back of your mind, especially since that was game 16 last year, I believe, 15-16, right, last year, between 15 between the Cardinals and the Panthers, that effectively, eliminated them from the playoffs. I think you're always looking at that 200 yards of rushing offense, and you're going, okay, that can't happen again, right? So don't let Chuba Hubbard beat you. How do the new defensive linemen, and then obviously Mac Wilson and Akeem Davis-Gaither, or if they're going to continue to utilize Rabbit in a heavy role, how do those guys react to that? Because, like we said, that was a bad one last year, and we know that the rush offense or the rush defense last year was porous, but that was a really, that was a kick in the what last year, in a pivotal game that could have set them up to still be in the playoffs.
Coming up next on the Rise of Zero podcast, Mr. Cardinals Talk on the Web. Let's move to the final segment where we make our picks, predictions, and talk about some prop bets that we like. That's coming up next on Rise of C-Red. Back on the Rise of C-Red podcast, Mr. Cardinals Talk on the Web. Continuing with our preview of the Cardinals and Panthers, but this time is when we make our projections. I know things didn't look good last week. Yeah, ultimately, they came away with a win and a cover with the under. I look at the Cardinals last year. When they won, they generally won big. They had five of their 8 wins were by double digits, and 6 of their 8 wins they scored 28 or more points. And so, is it wrong to predict kind of the blowout or kind of a quasi blowout where they win by at least 10?
I mean, that's the hope in this one, but the under is, at least on FanDuel, is heavily favored. The over is almost even numbers at 44.5. Is that the Cardinals? Is that the Panthers? Is it a combination of the two? It's minus 102. The under's at minus 120. So we're just talking about a little bit of vig there. The Cardinals at minus 6.5 are the betting favorites, minus 115, plus 6.5 for the Panthers. So the Panthers cover, again, close to even money, minus 105. I think this is just an indication of like the first week, right? You look at a Cardinals team that, you and I talked about it on Tuesday, Jess, about it looked like they were basically playing a preseason game, right? Like it was not an impressive win. And then we got the numbers, and by the numbers I mean the actual like informative numbers, the numbers that tell us like how often they blitzed, where they were aggressive, where they were, those type of numbers, and they blitzed probably the lowest that I can remember in terms of game from Jonathan Gannon at the least amount, and they didn't push the envelope much offensively, and they were very content in saying like, we don't think Spencer Rattler's going to beat us, and did it almost backfire? Sure. But like you said, they won, they covered, and they got out of there mostly unscathed. Obviously, Tip Ryman dealing with a foot issue, something to watch, but that's not going to affect much, right? Like, I mean
he's an important part of the run game, but then again, Travis, they do really like Travis Vokolek in that same sort of role. So he's not as fierce, but
by the way, I haven't looked at BetMGM today, but the rushing props for the Cardinals are not available right now.
Oh, let me. They were this afternoon. The rushing props. Nope, they do have them. They do have them on BetMGM.
So everything we go off of right now, and I'll pull that up as well, will be off of BetMGM. Actually, FanDuel's numbers right now are pretty awful. They only have Michael Wilson receiving yards numbers. They only have passing yards and touchdowns in the game for the quarterbacks. So like they don't even have T-Mac. They don't have Marvin Harrison Jr.
Oh,
they do have they do have a Trey McBride longest reception over or under 19.5. I would take the over on that. I know it's not necessarily like his game, but I think that like we talked about, going up against a defense that struggled. Trevin Wallace struggled in game one. Obviously, we know how much of a focal point McBride is in their passing offense. I like that, especially at minus 104. It gives you a little juice going into that one.
Let's start with the game predictions. I think I'm going to go with. I think on the other show I said 28-17. I'm going to say it's going to be 28-13 Cardinals.
It's really hard to like take them seriously, right? The Panthers, because they just
the classic trap game. I mean, just looking at the numbers is that 95% of the money line bets are on the Cardinals and 78% of the spread bets are on the Cardinals. So,
and again, we don't like that. Like, that's just not how we like to do things here at the Rise Up See Red podcast, because it's just not something that we're used to. So
nope. Well, how do you predict? I got 28-13. Which way are you going with that?
I'm going to go 30-17 Cardinals win. I think you're kind of right. I wouldn't be surprised if it was 30-10 and they score a late one. But that's how I look at this. It's just, until they, I don't want to say beat the Cardinals, but until they come out and play really well, like, you're going to be like, okay, let's see something before we give them too much credit or buy them too much. I mean, last week was just such a crap show, man. Like, it was not a pretty game for them.
Oh, so you like the over in this game, and I'm leaning toward the under. Although it sounds like you think it'll stay under until the very end, and you get the late bad beat going probably.
Right. And so that's the thing, is like the under's probably the smarter play in this one. Like, but I could see the Cardinals, in typical gracious fashion, allowing them to score one more time.
So I think my favorite player prop is just, I don't know why it's so low, but they have Bryce Young rushing total at 15.5.
Yeah, hammer that over, man.
And so, and if you want, we can't get. They don't have anything for him for alternate rushing yards. But I would hit 25 at least.
Yeah,
if it's going to stay at around 15, go over 15.5, and then ladder that to you'll get plus money on 25 plus for sure. And then for the Cardinals, James Conner's at 64.5 with Benson. I think I like the Benson one better. It's 33.5 for him. And you can get him at 50 plus for plus 185. So I think that might be the value one, is to go Benson over 33.5 and plus 185 for 50 plus.
Yeah, I like that quite a bit. I mean, it's always tough after game one. Connor only had 39 yards. Benson had 69 yards. So you look at it and you go, okay. Chuba Hubbard with only 57 yards. His over-under set at 64.5. The over's the better, or like the worse odds, right? Minus 118. So that means they think that he's going to clear that. But I'm with you on the backups. Rico Dowdle, over 17.5. He only had 12 in the first game, but he only got 3 carries. That was kind of odd to me.
Wow.
And part of that was they just played so poorly that they got out to such a bad start. So that's one to watch. I like that one. Are we gonna stay until they make an adjustment on the Murray yardage week to week? 26.5 seems like an easy an easy yes again after he was just so effortless to get there last week.
They'll adjust that at some point. And the weird thing, like on BetMGM, it's longer odds on the under. It's minus 110 for over 26.5 and minus 118 for the
Right.
under. I don't know why. Why? What are you doing?
That's an odd one. So, the other one player, wait, where did I have lost the touchdown passes? There they are. Passing touchdowns. It's definitely let me go back real quick. It's definitely better on BetMGM right now. It's plus money on BetMGM, plus 105 for Murray over 1.5.
I like that one too.
Yeah, FanDuel has him at minus 108. So you again, $10 you get 1050 instead of $10 you get 920, right? Like, or 980, I think. So like that's the way to look at that there. What do we think of Bryce Young, man? Like, is it going to be 2 passing touchdowns? We both have them scoring 2 touchdowns. So is it going to be 2? Well, I guess you change.
I have him just scoring 1. I got him for 13.
Yeah.
So.
But that's an interesting one because it is such good odds. Plus 180. Like those are.
Yeah.
That's an interesting one to put. Like I said, you put 5 on it, you win 9, and you basically cover all your other bets for the day, right?
Yeah, though if you wanted to go with the 2+ touchdowns, this is the one I'm going. James Conner.
Yep.
James Conner 2+ for 2 plus 240. I mean, it's not great.
It's not great, but it's
like it feels like an easy one.
Right. And then the last one that I like in this one, and it's just, I don't know what to make of the lines yet, but 58.5 for T-Mac, I would go the over on that. I think they're still struggling to figure out what the Panthers have. So you look at that and you go, they're going to be down. They're going to throw the ball. Take the over on T-Mac's numbers.
Yeah, that makes sense. Honestly, the Marvin Harrison 54.5, that seems kind of low.
That seems low. I'm with you, man. 63.5 on Trey, I wouldn't touch. That's
just kind of the sweet spot. Though, if like what I kind of it might be worth just the bet because the over 6.5 receptions is plus 110.
I know. I was looking at that too, man. That's a juicy one.
But if we don't like the 63.5,
right,
then but we also think that if they're going to load up to stop the run, that McBride's going to be open for days.
Exactly. So it's going to be interesting to see how they go about this. This is going to be one to kind of monitor, man, because these odds, there's nothing that I'm overly feel strongly about outside of the young guys overs on their receiving yards and the Murray rushing yards right now.
Yeah. The kicking props are not great, although you can get Ryan Fitzgerald over 1.5 field goals made, which I have him scoring 13 points, so that would make sense. But you get even money plus 100 on over 1.5. But nothing for Ryland is worth looking at for this one. They're just normal things. There's no extra reason why you'd want to look at that because the best thing you get is even money on Fitzgerald. So
yep.
And with that, we'll go ahead and wrap things up. That wraps up this edition of the Rise of Sierra podcast, Mr. Cardinals Talk on the Web. That's our third show of the week. We'll be back next week to talk about Seth and I will be back next week to talk about what was hopefully an easy win. And then next week following that, we will have hopefully 2 more shows as I'll try to get Kyle Madsen on from Niners Wire to preview the game. And Seth and I will preview the game of that. But until then, that's Seth Cox. I'm Jess Root. Thanks for listening as always. We'll be back again soon.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up, See Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up, Red Sea, be Red, See Red, and of course, Rise up, See Red.
Run!